Hello and welcome to Grouchy Old Geeks episode 60. My name's Steve, my co-host is Scott.
Hello.
This episode, we're going to start with some news and reviews, and then we've got a very special main feature. We're going to be talking about Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, and related things. So, what news, Scott?
So, yeah, just as we were discussing, as we discussed before every episode, things are fairly thin on the ground. There's something that I wanted to mention to you that definitely isn't news. But I was keen to get your opinion on it because I will tell you something and you could go one of two ways. You could go, are you insane? What a stupid thing to do. Or, yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. I'm thinking about doing the same. And I've got nowhere, no clue.
There's no middle ground. It has to be one or the other.
Yeah. So, after signing up for it, I looked at my emails today. After having signed up for it and been a continuous subscriber since the 12th of December 2014, a couple of days ago we cancelled our Netflix subscription.
Wow! Why? Why? Are you insane? How come?
At least the query is resolved now. I know what side of the spectrum you're going to come on. So we've got three things that we subscribe to. So we've got Amazon Prime, which you obviously get the delivery. So that's we're always going to have that. Disney Plus and Netflix, and we just found that we weren't really watching that much Netflix. And it wasn't really a financial decision, but it was just kind of we're now spending, Sky TV levels of subscription money at these three services now. And one of them we don't particularly use. So plus, if you're in the UK, you've got iPlayer and all sorts of things like that, and the TV license. That it wasn't like a hard decision of we're going to get rid of this, but it was basically we're just throwing this money at it for no. We're not yielding any benefit from it. Yeah, because we just realised that we weren't really watching it, so we just decided to get rid of it. But obviously, it's no effort at all to sign up again. So if we go cold turkey for a bit and then struggle, and then I think there's an argument to, maybe having, there's lots of different services out there, but I mentioned we've got Disney Plus. Maybe having Disney Plus for a year and then letting Netflix produce loads of new stuff, and then dropping Disney Plus and going to Netflix for a year and then going back to Disney Plus and, maybe switching between them. So, yeah.
I thought you were going to say, so I've signed up for Apple TV now, so I can watch the Foundation TVs. And
I can't, as much as I love Foundation, and I do love Foundation, I was away with work at the weekend, and I was having a conversation with somebody about Foundation. And as much as I love Foundation, it's not enough to swing me to Apple TV. And I don't know why I've got a bias in my head against Apple TV. I've got nothing against Apple, but I can't bear the thought of getting Apple TV.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be CBS soon, and there'll be another one you can sign up for.
Yeah.
And, a whole bunch of other ones that are... well, we've got Netflix, Amazon, and Disney as well. And I'm not watching much on Disney. I'm kind of rewatching The Mandalorian. I'm watching some of the Marvel What Ifs at the moment. There's only two of them at the moment. I'm waiting for the new TV series to drop and the new Star Wars TV series. That's why I'm keeping Disney. I don't really watch many of the films, mostly because I've seen a lot of them. But I do use Star a fair bit on Disney to watch a lot of TV shows and things that I missed or I'm catching up on, like Burn Notice. I never got to the end, so I'm trying to work my way through that now. But I've forgotten how tough 22 episode seasons were.
Yeah.
A lot of filler.
There's a lot of filler.
Yeah. Anyway, my first bit of news is all kind of Marvel related. The head honcho of Marvel, Kevin Feige, recently did an interview with him. They're talking about the Shang-Chi movie. Loki got obviously a hiccup, which is the first one of the other ones to get an official sort of, second series pickup. They're talking about the next Avengers saga, and they're saying they're going to have to build up to it like they did the last time, which is good. We don't want them to try and jump to a massive Avengers thing because they can't. And they're saying they're working on Deadpool 3. The script apparently is in the works.
That's kind of a surprise. I thought once they owned Deadpool again, that was curtain for Deadpool.
Mm-hmm. But it was so popular and it's made so much money that the mouse is apparently okay with that, bending the rules for a very, very heavy R-rated thing. But we got that. We've got Eternals. We've got Shang-Chi. We've got the new Spider-Man films. There's plenty of Marvel stuff. But I haven't got the same attachment to it. I mean, a lot of it I will watch, and I'm excited about watching, but I don't think I'm going to go to the cinema to see most of it. I'll probably wait.
Yeah, funny enough, I was going to say exactly the same thing to you, because one of the things that I've got in my news was the new Eternals trailer dropped.
Yes.
And it's a perfectly good trailer.
Yep.
And if this was 20 years ago, it would have been the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But now we're saturated with this stuff, and there was that big. There's been that big build up from, Iron Man to Endgame, and we've kind of been through that.
It took 10 years to get there,
and we've been on that journey, and I find it difficult to rekindle the enthusiasm that I had for it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's done and it's spent, and like I really wish it the best, but I find it really difficult to rekindle the same enthusiasm that I used to have for it.
Yeah. It's going to take a while. Maybe in 5 years when they've done a number of these things and it's starting to build, I'll be able to go back and watch them a lot more quickly. It's that thing of you can kind of binge TV shows now and you're done and you get really excited, whereas the films are a lot slower. And if they're trying to build this excitement level, I don't think I can go through kind of 8 years of one film a year or more, to wait, and then they get to something and then I get excited. I think I'm going to have to just wait a couple of years, watch a bunch of films, and then see if I get that any kind of, oh yeah, that's good. I'll go and see the next one. Or, I mean, I do want to see the new Spider-Man film, but I'm just going to wait, Anyway, do you have any more news?
I do, actually. So looking at, I just happened to be noticing that September's going to be a big month. So if you've got Apple TV, and I'm very happy for both of you in the UK that have got Apple TV, Foundation is due out in September.
Yep.
And also, and I didn't know, I knew it was coming out. I had no idea it was on Disney Plus, but Why the Last Man is coming out in September as well.
Mm-hmm.
And probably it's in the running for being, it's undoubtedly one of my favorite comics of all time.
Yeah.
It doesn't overtake Watchmen, but it's up there. Like it's
Mr. Miracle.
Yeah, it's Watchmen and Mr. Miracle quality. And I have this horrendous feeling that it's going to be terrible, but I so hope that I'm wrong. I really want it to be brilliant. And I had no idea, there was a trailer for it, and, there's been talk for such a long time about there being a TV version of this.
Yeah.
But I had no idea it was just right around the corner.
You think that's bad? So my other bit of news is there's a lot of things coming out in the next few months, and there's been trailers for them. What We Do in the Shadows season 3 starts soon. The wrap up of the latest season of Lucifer. We're getting The Witcher on December 17th. That's season 2, right? Here's the one that is around the corner, and I mean that very, very, very close. So the Lord of the Rings TV series that they've been working on.
Again, another thing that's very difficult for me to, as much as I love the Lord of the Rings film, very difficult for me to drum up any enthusiasm about it.
The first episode lands on the 2nd of September this
wow.
I think is it this year or next year? But maybe it's next year. But there's been like almost no. Hang on, when is it? It's next year. I was going to say. Okay. I was thinking if it's this year, that is ridiculous. Okay, it's the 2nd of September next year. That's a bit better. But they've been talking about casting. They've been talking. They're moving. They finished season 1 because they're moving production for season 2 onwards to the UK from New Zealand, which is my other bit of news. So I'm going to go and try and be a background actor and be a dwarf or an elf or an ent in the background and just kind of walk, stand very tall in the background and things. But
nothing would make me happy to see you as a dwarf in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, called Carrot, and I was adopted. It's next year. But there's loads of stuff. Like you said, we're spoiled. We're absolutely spoiled. There's a TV show that I think it's on iPlayer of all places, the first season called Fort Salem Motherland. Did you ever see any of that?
No, not heard of it.
Well, the news that I've just found out is that one of the cable networks in America or something has renewed it for the next season. I thought, oh, brilliant. And then I found out it was the 3rd and final season. I'm like, well, where's season 2? What do you mean season 3 is been renewed for third season? So there's that as well. There's so much stuff. I can't keep up. Even on things that I want to watch, I can't keep up. It's ridiculous.
Right, I've got one more piece of news, and it's a piece of news that I'm confident isn't going to turn into a genuine piece of news. But we know. So are you still a regular Doctor Who watcher?
I haven't watched it in years. Like halfway through the Peter Capaldi thing, I just kind of had to give up because I got bored.
Yeah, so I stopped watching. I watched David Tennant.
Yep.
And I think I watched the first episode of Matt Smith, and I liked him. Got nothing against him at all, but I just couldn't get enthusiasm for it. But I still, over the weekend, I was back watching some of the Tom Baker episodes. So
that's how far back you've gone.
It left me behind in the 80s. But we know that the latest Doctor, and I don't even know her name, Jodie
Comer. No, sorry, Jesus. Jodie Comer's from
Whittaker.
Jodie Whittaker, yes.
Jodie Whittaker.
I think so.
We know that she's leaving, and more importantly to this piece of news, we know that the showrunner, Chris Chibnall is leaving. And JMS has been speaking to them. Actually, so I knew that there was a campaign to try and get him on board.
Yeah.
And he basically said, yeah, I'd do it, which I can instantly discounted. But I was reading an article today that was basically just quoting him sending Twitter messages where he's basically said, yes, he's been in contact with the BBC about it. And he's speaking to them about it. And the BBC has got a process to go through, so it might not happen. But to quote his Twitter message, contact has been made. So I'm going to label this as a remote possibility, but still a possibility, because I would love to see JMS doing Doctor Who. Would be, well, I'd say it's a dream come true. It's not something I've ever even dreamed of being being a possibility.
Yeah.
But it would be amazing to see.
So from what he said, he mentioned it, other people said it. He said, okay, that would be great. They got in contact with him and said, there is a process in place. They're currently going through that process. If they don't get anybody, then they might consider him for part of that process. That's kind of the thing where they'd like essentially audition him for what his ideas would be my guess. and potentially what he'd do with the show. And so I think if they'd just ignored it, it would have looked odd. But he said maybe. Oh, speaking of which, he's writing fiction now. So he's got a book out that's called Becoming a Writer, Staying a Writer. So it's a non-fiction book about him, talking about his experience. And his first work of fiction is this one. It's called Together We Will Go. So I picked up that. I've got that to read soon. So it's his first ever fiction novel he's done, and it's been well regarded, and it's come out. And so busy man, he's doing lots of different things. He never
so that still. As much as and I know that obviously I know that you're an author, and as much of it impresses me that somebody can write a book, that is kind of dwarfed by the fact that you wrote 66 episodes back to back of Babylon 5. So just bashing out a novel seems that doesn't seem his greatest feat of literary accomplishment.
He's constantly moved. Like he did, animation until he blew up that career. Mm-hmm. He did TV, and then he did film, and then he's done comics. He's done a bit of theatre, I think, and now he's doing novels, and so he's always trying new things and expanding new things, different.
So you just showed me the cover of the book, and it doesn't look like, this is just showing my own personal biases, but it doesn't look like sci-fi at all.
Not in the slightest. It's completely, so it's called Together We Will Go. It's about a bunch of people who are essentially deciding to end their life for various reasons, and they all hire a bus. And the idea is they're going to cross the country. I think they get to San Francisco and then just drive off a cliff together. And it's the journey and the story of these people crossing the country, talking to each other, finding out about each other, having an adventure before they all kill themselves. So it's, touching and heartwarming and distracting and complicated and meaningful, but it's all about people, and there's no sci-fi at all. So
that's... you say that until the very fine,
and then the aliens come down, take the bus, take them away to a space station. Yeah, it's the last hope for peace. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe, who knows? My last bit of news isn't news either, but I just wanted to see if you got any thoughts, if you've seen it. Have you seen the new Suicide Squad film?
No, I haven't. I have more. I've seen the first one, and that would normally be enough for me to be done with the whole thing. The fact that it seems like, James Gunn is behind it. Tonally, it seems very different. It seems like it's a reprieve for something that didn't really deserve a reprieve. But it's not something that I'm in a rush to watch. I would definitely see it at some point, and I expect that I'll enjoy it. But it's not something that I'm rushing out to see at the earliest opportunity.
It's okay. It's quite good. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are expecting Guardians because, that's what he's now known for. Yeah. Never mind any of the films that he did before them. It's not as good as Guardians. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the same tone. It's not supposed to, because if you know the source material, that it's very, very dark. Even the name kind of tells you, That was one of the problems with the first film. Almost all of them survived. It's like, that's not how it works. It's supposed to be a mission that is a suicide attempt. And if anybody gets out, that's great. If no one does, well, oh well, because they're lifers. That's the whole point. So I've seen it. It's quite good. I'd give it 6.5, maybe 7 out of 10 at a push. Mm-hmm. I'm glad to see that the person who made Suicide Squad in the comics into something that it is today finally got recognition. In the first Suicide Squad film, that was a bit of a mess, his name appeared on the big side of a building, so that was quite good. In this version, he got a cameo in the film, and a couple of lines, and it's John Ostrander, who's one of my favorite comic book writers, who did Spectre and Martian Manhunter and all this sort of stuff, but he created the Suicide Squad as we know it today. And there's a short scene that he's in with Michael Rooker as one of the sort of scientists doing something. So that was really cool. And I listened to an interview with him recently talking about it, and he said they were very nice, and James Gunn was brilliant, and he knew the stuff, and they had him on set all day and when he was filming his bit. So I'm glad that James Gunn at least is giving him is due. I don't know if DC have, or Warner's, with a little bit of cha-ching, but who knows? But at least those some people have given him recognition. But it's quite good. There's some funny moments, there's some good moments, some very dark moments, as I would expect. But yeah, it's all right. It's all right. It's worth seeing, but it probably wasn't worth seeing at the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, get to it when you can.
But you didn't. I'm guessing you didn't go to the cinema.
Yes,
you did go to the cinema. Oh,
yes, I did. Yes, so it was mask on and not very busy, so that was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not. It was all right, as cinema experiences go. So there you go. Anyway, that was my last bit of news. So shall we move on?
Yeah, let's go for it. Hello, welcome back. So for our main feature, we are anticipating the very imminent release of Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve, and it feels like we've been talking about this film since we both saw and loved Blade Runner 2049. So we're both heavily invested in this film coming out, but it's both for both of us. It's a series of books that we've both loved for a really long time. It's jointly our favourite novel, but we never knew this. I guess until a few years after first starting to talk.
Yeah.
So we just kind of wanted to, I guess, do a retrospective of our relationship with the Dune saga as it stands before everything changes in a month's time, and we've got a whole new take on it to enjoy.
Yes.
So when do you remember when you first became aware of Dune and how you consumed it and what you thought of it?
I do, oddly. So in high school, I would have been about 13. My brother had a paperback copy of Dune, the really old one from the 80s. Really dog-eared, spine was broken, and it sat on his bookshelf in his bedroom for years. And all the other books didn't interest me, but that one interested me. And I remember trying to read it back then, and I read some of it, and I didn't really understand it. It was a bit too dense. But then there was the film as well, which was probably a few years later. The Kyle MacLachlan with Sting.
So I think it came out in like 84, but back in the day, it took years for things to be available on video or to come out on TV. So even if the film came out in 84, it might have been 3 or 4 years before it would have been available to us to watch.
Yeah, 1984, you're right. Yeah, so it could have been on TV, in 87 or 88 or something. That's the first time I saw bits of it. And I just remember the strange kind of noises that Gurney and the others were making whilst they were...
The weirding modules.
Yes, and all of that. And of course, it was Patrick Stewart, and all of that was just so odd. It was just so peculiar that I don't think they're doing that in the new ones, which is probably good because it just looked really weird.
So the weirding modules, bizarrely, I think were entirely an invention for the film. Okay. I don't think they have them in the book at all.
No, I don't think so. It doesn't. No. They just have body shields.
Yeah.
That's it. But yeah, the weirding modules and the voice thing and all of that. Anyway, where did you first meet Dune then? How did you encounter it?
So interestingly, our introduction to it was really, really similar. So the first way that I was exposed to it was as the film. And it would have been at the same time, a couple of years older than you, but it would have been, whenever it was first on UK TV. So we probably saw it at exactly the same time. And I really liked it, and I still do. It gets lots of, to be quite frank, very fair criticism. But it's still something that I have a real soft spot for. I don't think because of the plot, because it's Denis Villeneuve is doing the first book as two long films, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they try and condense it in the David Lynch version in a way that's at best incoherent. But I absolutely love the design of it. I think it looks absolutely stunning, and I love the universe they created. And it was very quickly after that I tried to read the book, but I had exactly the same reaction as you did. I think I was just too young,
right,
and it was too dense for it to really appeal to me. So I started it, decided it wasn't for me, and then just gave up on it fairly early on. And then when I was doing my A-levels, so when I was about 17, 18, I had a friend of mine who was absolutely obsessed with it. Like, could barely talk about anything else. And it was him that kind of caused me to pick it up, and I absolutely loved it. And I can think of several things where around about that age, I had kind of a similar experience. I tried it once when I was just a bit too young. It didn't really work for me. And then when I was a little bit older, it really transformed. And Dune was definitely one of them, one of those experiences. I don't think at the time I immediately went on and read all the other books in the series.
Right. I didn't either, no.
But it was probably so Dune is probably the novel that I reread the most times, I think.
Right.
And that includes, and so it was probably on my second reread that I went and read the sequels that are of mixed quality, I think. I absolutely love some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them are bordering on unreadable, in my opinion. But that, yeah, so similar. So you tried to read the books and then you saw the film, and I was the other way around. But in terms of reading it for the first time, not getting on with it, and then coming back to it for a second time, we had exactly the same experience there.
Yeah, yeah. So if I think about the books, so it was years later, having reread Dune, that I then went back and read Dune Messiah, which is fairly short, and Children of Dune, which makes sense because they're both quite short books.
Yeah.
And isn't it the fourth one, God Emperor of Dune, that's like thousands of years later, where his son is, spoilers for everyone who hasn't read a book from 1981, is a giant sandworm, immortal emperor. That's the fourth one, isn't it?
So I can't. I'll get mixed up between the fourth and the fifth one. One of them is God Emperor of Dune.
That's the fourth one,
which I really, really love. And then the other one is, I really like. I know it's a controversial opinion.
Wow.
But I really, really like God Emperor of Dune. The one that I think is really, the one which I find unreadable is Chapter House Dune.
Okay, so looking at the list, you got God Emperor of Dune 4, 81, Heretics of Dune 1984, and then Chapter House Dune 1985.
Right.
So my read was the exact opposite. I loved 1, 2 and 3 were good and interesting. I found 4, God Emperor of Dune, absolutely intolerable, unreadable pap. I found the promise of the Golden Path and all the other stuff that they built up. When I got to that one, I just found it such a disappointment. It was just a giant fart of a book that I just read and thought, what on earth is this? It felt so different. Now, I know we'll talk about that later, that his son has gone on to write books and prequels with Kevin J. Anderson and stuff, and I've not read any of them. But I just got to that fourth one and I thought, they build up things in the first one, with Paul being the Kwisatz Haderach, and then talking about the Golden Path and what's to come, and then his son is perhaps, his purpose was only there to lead his son to something greater, and then his son just ends up as an eternal giant sandworm despot who then sets up his own downfall. And I read it and I thought, what is this? So I haven't read Chapter House or Heretics. I just never got around to them. That put me off so much.
I really like it.
Is the next one any good? Heretics?
I honestly can't remember anything about
You can't
Heretics.
stand Chapter House?
I really disliked Chapter House, Dune.
What's that one about?
Well, based on what you just said, that's the one that you should really read. Because if I loved God Emperor and you hated it, and then I hated Chapter House, you should go straight to that one.
Oh man. Wow. Oh dear. Yeah, I've reread 1, 2, and 3. I just can't go back and read 4 again. That time I read it fairly recently in the last 10 years, I read it and just thought, oof. I'll tell you what, though, the TV series they did in the 90s was really, really good. That was amazing. I think that... Have you seen it?
I've seen the Sci-Fi Channel one. I didn't realise it was that old.
So it's 2000.
Okay.
They did Dune and then they did Children of Dune. So they kind of merged. They kind of jump a bit. The first 6 or 8 parter was just focusing on Paul, and then the next one is where the twins are. Well, I think in the books they're like 11 or 12, but in this it was James McAvoy, and he was supposed to be late teens, but he's probably actually in his early 20s.
Yeah, and William Hurt was his father, wasn't he? I think.
Yes, but that was the year 2000. Now that's how crazy.
I would have. Yeah, it kind of makes sense if the Marvel movies have been going on for 10 years, but yeah, when you said it was that old, I thought, Is there been a previous TV series?
No, this is what I like. It can't be that long. Oh wait, if Marvel had gone for 10 years, and it was sometime before that. I mean, the Millennium was only about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
I really liked that sci-fi series. I thought they did a really good job.
They had space to explore instead of cutting into a 2-hour film, and you just cut out so much.
And I thought it was. Generally, there's one character in it that I really didn't take to at all. But other than that, I thought it was really, really well cast.
Who didn't you take to?
So the character that I really struggled with, and not that the person that plays this character will ever listen to this. I want to say it's not. It's nothing personal, but I just really found it difficult to take to the character the way it was portrayed of Gurney Halleck,
right,
in the sci-fi show, possibly because I obviously absolutely love Patrick Stewart, and Patrick Stewart played that character in the David Lynch version, but I just didn't think the way that he delivered the lines just didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought every other character was absolutely spot on.
So they filmed, from what I remember, they filmed a lot of it in Europe, in like the Czech Republic and things. So some of the actors they got were local, and 20 years ago, it was less common to hear Czech accents or see Czech actors on TV, and it gave them the version of them feeling other, which is what you want the Fremen to feel like. And that really helped. So I can't even I can't pronounce the name of the actor who played Stilgar, but he was absolutely fantastic. The actress who played Cheney, she was brilliant. I'm trying to find her name now, but Barbara Kodotova, maybe I want to say, but she's a Czech actress, and she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it was an English guy playing Paul, Alec Newman, as Muad'Dib. He was good. And Ian McNeice as the Baron was fantastic. I met him as well. I think I told you this years ago, but after the sci-fi series came out, I got the box set, and a really nice one. And I went to an event, and Ian McNeice was there, and I got him to sign it. And we were just chatting away at his table for ages, and he was telling us about how the difference between working on UK TV, which he's predominantly known for, and then he went and did this sci-fi show. And and it was one of those things like, in Babylon 5, they filmed it in his factory and you don't really know what's going on. You don't hear anything because you can kind of a bubble. He said, we filmed this in Europe and we filmed this here and filmed this there. And, he thought, it'll do quite well. I don't really know, but hopefully. And then he got invited to the premiere in America, and, they flew him out there, and very nice, very nice. And he gets there and a car picks him up for the airport. You think, oh, this is very nice. And on the way to the sort of premiere, they go past the building, and his wife kind of pokes him and says, look. And he's like, what? And there's all these massive posters hanging off the side of buildings, not sort of, 6-foot billboards, but stories high. And one of them is him as the Baron. He's like, oh, okay. This is how they do it in America. It's really big scale. He's like, wow, my face is really big. And it's just like a massive poster of him as the Baron. And he's like, okay, now I know what we're doing. So he had just a fantastic time on the whole thing. He was telling us all these stories, except when he was in a contraption and they dangle him around and he'd be floating around. It felt like a giant nappy. But but yeah, he had a brilliant time. But I loved that version because we got space and time. So Denis Villeneuve's doing 2 3-hour-ish movies. And if you get director's cuts later, they might be longer. But that had 6 hours. And then I think The Children of Dune had 4 or 5 hours as well. And they did really well, I think.
Yeah, they were, as much as I have a soft spot specifically for the design of the David Lynch version, I don't think there's any argument that the Sci-Fi Channel shows were objectively better in almost every single way.
Yeah, no, the guy, apart from your thing about the person who played Gurney, but the rest of it was just brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And they were able to expand on it and do Children of Dune fairly soon afterwards, only a couple of years later, I think, or even the following year. So we've both read some of the books. Have you read any of the prequels, any of the sequels that were done later with Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson?
No. And they could be brilliant. And I genuinely don't know whether I've not heard anything about, I've literally heard nothing about them, positive or negative. I've seen them in bookshops on a shelf, and that's genuinely, the fact that they exist is honestly the only thing that I know about them.
Right.
But I just have no interest in them at all. I hope they're brilliant, but I just don't. I just don't have any confidence that they are. What have you? Do you know anything about them? Have you tried to read them?
And I haven't read them. I know that they're based upon the notes left behind by Frank Herbert, and that his son worked on it with Kevin J. Anderson, who was, who is a renowned science fiction writer. He's been doing science fiction for 30 years, Mars books and all the rest of it. So it made sense for his son to team up with an established science fiction author. So they wrote 2 based upon the notes of Frank Herbert, the father. And I think they did well enough. They probably did okay, and the fans will quibble on them. But I know they then have gone back and done prequel novels. And I don't know how much that's based upon anything. That could just be complete, fiction on their part. And I'm not okay with that kind of thing. Or I think some of them, they reference something in Dune, in historic things, and then they've gone back and written about that kind of thing. And I'm like,
so the big historic thing that they mentioned they mentioned all through the Frank Herbert versions, but they mentioned quite a lot, is the Butlerian Jihad.
Yes.
Which was basically why they don't have any advanced computers or artificial intelligences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was this sort of this AI uprising from about something crazy like 10,000 years before the books are set. So not knowing anything about the books, if they're going back to a historic event that's referred to, I can only imagine it is the Butlerian Jihad. I
would think so. It's going to go through all the different kind of phases. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back and things. It's just like, Terry Pratchett made sure they steamrolled all of his hard drives with all of his old book ideas and notes on, so that they couldn't do this. And I understand that thing. There's a lot of stuff that I've written in over the years that before I got to where I am, that's rubbish. I'm learning as I go. I don't want someone digging that up when I'm gone and trying to make money off some crap that I didn't think was worth, So I don't know. I just something. It's like Star Wars prequels. You don't need to know some of the stuff. You can just refer to it, and then it moves on and it creates the character in the present. You don't need to then see the story in full because you already know the broad strokes of what happens. So you don't get anything else from it.
That's the thing that drove me, as much as I find it a likable film, that's the thing that drove me absolutely nuts about the Han Solo prequel story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, right at the beginning, they must have stood there with a whiteboard and been like, right, we need to know why he got the name Solo. We need to have him meeting Chewbacca. We need to have him winning the Millennium Falcon. And they just stuff all of these things in there that are just based on, at best, one-liners from The Empire Strikes Back or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's no need to show all of these things. I hate it when they do things like that.
So my fear is that this is what some of this will be, going back and exploring stuff. And if it's, I'd rather his son just sort of said, right, I'm doing a book 10,000 years in the future, because then it's clean slate in terms of you're not tied into something that has to set up for something years later. I mean, they're doing that with Game of Thrones. They're going so many thousand years into the past and retelling stuff for the spin-off show. And there again, it's going to be so tenuous, the link. Only the hardcore fans will get it. The rest of us will just go, that's a familiar name, and that's fine. But yeah, I'm not keen. But anyway, so should we talk about the new Denis Villeneuve film and TV series?
This is news to me.
Oh no, I told you about this.
You probably did.
He's doing a TV series about the sisters, about
the Bene Gesserit.
Yes. I think they're doing it fairly soon after. However, he's only done one of the two films that's making up the first book. So, I thought they'd filmed all of it, but they haven't. They've only actually filmed the first half.
Oh, that's a real surprise, because I assumed that they did a Lord of the Rings, right, where they basically they did all of the live shooting for all three films, essentially in one go, in one 18-month massive shooting schedule, and then did all the post-production for each film in the year before it came out.
And
I assumed, because it was kind of always planned to be two films, wasn't it?
Yes.
So they must have gone in knowing that they're going to have to come back and shoot all this stuff again. So that's really bizarre to me that they just didn't make I hate to bring accountancy into it, but the thing that would be cost effective, right, would be just to do all at the same time.
It is. You would think so. But from the latest news story I read yesterday, Villeneuve is currently writing the script for the second part with his screenwriting partner, and they could begin filming the sequel in the fall, autumn, to everybody else in the world, of 2022. So this week, whilst he was talking on a Canadian radio show, Villeneuve, this is my other bit of news, revealed that he's considering making a Dune trilogy with an adaptation of Dune Messiah for the third part. So that's what he's thinking about. So we're still going to have part 2, which will wrap up the first book, and then threads will be left dangling, and he may do a third film for Dune Messiah.
So two things there. One, I'm now wondering if I can email him and persuade him to do God Emperor of Dune instead. But the second one is, I assumed, based on complete ignorance, that we were going to see the first half of the basically the first half of the first book in a couple of months' time, and then 12 months after that, we were going to see the second half of the first book, like happened with the Lord of the Rings. But now you're telling me that in 2022 is when he's going to start writing the second one. So we're not going to see it until...
So he's writing it now, but they won't start filming it until next year, which means we won't see it until 2023.
At best.
At best.
Right?
At best. However, then there's the Sisterhood TV series, which is going to be about the Bene Gesserits. It's going to air on HBO Max, but I don't know if that's been written. My guess is not. I don't know when that's potentially going to air or how it's going to, work in relation to the film. It's don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah, he says, and it's clearly, the Bene Gesserits in the books are basically the puppet masters, right? They're the people behind that are manipulating things behind the scenes.
Yes,
and they're super, super powerful. But they basically just let emperors and kings and dukes act like they've got all the power, but the Bene Gesserits are the ones they're manipulating things in the background. But because of that, because they don't ever, or they've only very, very rarely come out of the shadows, they're not really prominently featured in any of the books. So this is going to be a series inspired by the books, but not based on anything in the books.
No,
which I hope is great, but yeah,
it's concern. It's like, well, what are the stories going to be about? How's it going to work? Is it about them creating building things in the present to create the future? How does it work? So I don't know. It's going to have to be quite mystical and tie into all of the prophecies and all the things that he set up in the first couple of books, all of that sort of thing. But so the first film apparently is 155 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, a little over 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And it's going to be released on October the 22nd in theaters and on HBO Max. Which I understand why, not just because of COVID, that's probably spurred things on for this dual release, which they were doing it a little bit anyway, did day and date digital release, but they weren't really doing it on the big blockbusters. They're doing it on the smaller films that weren't going to make it as much.
So obviously, the very first thing that we saw that did it, and I'm confident that you saw this, was Trolls World Tour. But they did the biggest film that I'm aware of where they did it was Black Widow, which I've not seen.
Not me neither.
But Black Widow is obviously would have been in pre-pandemic days a major
blockbuster
cinema release.
Yeah. So now they're doing it for this. I think I've said this before. It would be a crime to see it on a small screen. For that, everything they're bringing together. Hans Zimmer doing the music, all the visuals, that writing, that cast, the amazing CGI. I want to see the sandworm come up. I want to feel the chair shake. I want the speakers to deafen me with its roar. I'm not going to get that from my TV unless I strap one to each of my head, either side of my head. I'm just not going to get it. So
the thing is, as much as I love Denis Villeneuve, and I kind of get the impression in Hollywood, he's very, very well respected as a director because he's done some really big stuff that hasn't really been a massive commercial success. Like Blade Runner 2049, I thought was absolutely brilliant, but I have a feeling that it didn't make like massive money at the box office. So maybe this is an opportunity to make more money on streaming I just don't know. I really don't know how these things work nowadays.
Let's have a look. So Blade Runner 2049, the budget was 150 million.
Mm-hmm.
Worldwide, it made 259 million. So 109 million profit, which don't they sort of say you have to kind of double it to once you cover all the marketing and promotion and PR?
Yeah, I think I really don't understand this, but I think you basically have to double it to break even when you take into account everything.
But it's made 109 million profit off the box office, and then off that doesn't include now digital sales and everything else, which obviously accounts for a good chunk. And buying it on demand, people buy the DVDs and the Blu-rays and
I was going to say
special editions.
I've bought it about 5 times, so I'm doing my part.
There you go. And I bought the digital version so I can watch it on telly, even though I've seen it at the cinema. So he's a well-regarded guy. And I hope this does well. But as has proven in recent times, even other big box office films at the moment are struggling in the cinema because people are still nervous about going. Pandemic is still rampant in some places. It's still out of control. And a cinema is a very confined space with lots of aircon, recycling the air, which doesn't feel good for a lot of people, And masks are no longer compulsory in some places. So I don't know. I want it to do really well. I want it to be fantastic. It sounds like they're going ahead with part 2 anyway, because it's not out yet and he's writing it. So I'm assuming they've given him the green light to at least finish this off. And then if it does well, he'll do the third one. But like you, I wish he'd write part 2. And if he's definitely going to do part 3 as Children of Dune, or something, just do it now. Do it back to back with the other one. So everybody's still there, because you don't want the actors changing suddenly if someone dies or gets a bit older or changes how they look. Or like you, I thought they were just doing an 18-month stint like Lord of the Rings, and then they come out once a year.
Yeah, that's surprising. That's completely surprised me. Yeah,
but I'm still looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to this first half. They did like a special thing recently where you could watch the first 10 minutes at an IMAX and stuff. Apparently, you have to pay obviously and go for that. And some people said that was brilliant. So it's getting the fans excited. But it's less. It's less than 2 months away now. I will be going to see it in the cinema for sure.
Yeah, if I it feels like I've hit a point. I was kind of always like this, although the director's changed. It feels like I've hit a point now where the director alone is enough to get me to go to the cinema,
right?
Or enough to put me off going to the cinema. So, the last films that I really anticipated to go and see was Blade Runner 2049 by Denis Villeneuve, Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan, and Tenet by Christopher Nolan as well. So, Denis Villeneuve has got my loyalty to get me to go to the cinema.
Yeah, both of us for sure. So let's find out. I guess people get in contact, see if they've read any of the other books. What do they like? Did they like the sequels? Do you like the prequels? Let us know. Get in touch with us in all the usual ways. We're on a Facebook group. Come and talk to us on there. It's probably the best place. We're on email as well. And I guess in 2 months' time, we'll be talking about the film and sharing our thoughts on how it measured up to our expectations. That's going to be interesting. Got high hopes.
Can you imagine if we have to do an episode where we talk about how terrible we thought it was?
Utter disappointment, shambles.
We get to a point where we say, and that musical number in the middle was.
I thought the weirding was bad on the Lynch version, but this time the weirding machine. Oh no. What was he thinking? Kazoos. Anyway, yes, I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, so we'll be talking about that in 2 months' time, but we'll be back next month as usual in September. But in the meantime, it's good night for me,
and it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.